After 6 of Ice Hearts of the Lunaverse. To have to hold. Absolutely not. No physical contact will be permitted. Convey this to the Wendigo. Tracy nodded and focused, the light from her horn momentarily brightening as she modified the illusion. A miniature illusion of the ponies and Wendigo formed in front of her, with the Wendigo standing several feet back from the illusionary Ice Heart. After another moment, Tracy changed it again, and the illusionary elements were positioned around Ice Heart. Is this acceptable? She asked Poussant. Move your friends about 6 inches away from Ice Heart, on all sides. We don't want to look like we're keeping him prisoner. Even though you kinda are. Got it. Tracy made the change. When the Vice-Marine gave a short nod of approval, her horn flared up again, and a larger version of the illusion, large enough that the Wendigo would surely be able to see every detail, appeared on the step between the ponies and the monster. Dizzy fought to keep her head up. She was tired, hungry, and very cold. They had been on the step for several hours, standing still as the Viceroy and Tracy negotiated with the Wendigo. Each round began with the monster sending an image, at which point Poussant would immediately disagree with some detail. The Wendigo's proximity to Ice Heart, for instance, or the likes of the elements still being present, and would instruct Tracy to draft a new illusion in response. She and Tracy would tweak every little detail in the draft until it was made to Poussant's hyper-exacting specifications. After which, Tracy would make the full-scale version so the monster could see it. Then the Wendigo would make a sound that reminded Ditsy of an awful ice storm that once blew up Ponyville for the Everfree Forest. It would create another image. This one basically the same, or maybe a fraction of increment closer to Poussant's. Tracy's next illusion was so similar lack of willingness to compromise. And thus 10 hours have passed. It's like the world's worst full custody hearing, Shirley whispered to her early on, where one of the parties is a greedy monster with a heart of ice. She paused. And the other is Wendigo. Fortunately, Ditsy managed to not laugh out loud at that. But as time passed, even Shirley's occasional jokes seemed to lose their humor. It wasn't just the disorienting visions that were wearing on Ditsy, but the grueling physical conditions as well. While Poussant's servants had shown up around noon with bottles either for Trixie, an unavoidable necessity given how much magic she was using, but no point had come with food. Trixie explained, when Raindrops asked about this, that it would show weakness to take a lunch break. They needed to demonstrate that they were strong and hardy enough that the Wendigo couldn't just attack them and take Ice Heart by force. And they couldn't do that, they demanded an hour of time out for hay pizza. So they worked without food, and Ditsy tried to tell herself it was at least for a good reason. She looked over at Poussant's. The old mare didn't seem affected by the cold. The cold never bothered her anyway. Was that surprised Ditsy? She had her fire ruby, of course, and she was a Pegasus to boot. Or by the lack of food. In fact, she stood stolid strong in the snow, looking straight at the Wendigo without flinching, as if saying she feared if not. Watching her, Ditsy could understand why Lula felt confident in her conducting negotiations with a monster drawn straight from the fears of ponykind. Vice-Marine? Asked Shirley. It's starting to get dark. Can we find our way back without light? Poussant glanced up. I prefer not to, she mused. Trixie, tell the Wendigo we'll be going, and we'll be back tomorrow at the same time. Trixie nodded and wiped away the existing illusion, then made a new one that showed 7 ponies walking away as the sun lowered, then returning when it rose back in the night sky. When Poussant approved of it, only after another 10 minutes of refreshments, she put it on the step. Well, now, if he just lets us. The Wendigo hissed again, and Ditsy felt a surge of something like concentrated anger wash over her. Even as she found herself stumbling back a step, the Wendigo began to move forwards. Trixie's illusion flashed as the fake ponies used their elements to knock the illusionary Wendigo back. The real Wendigo stopped moving forwards, though Ditsy couldn't find any trace of fear in its alien, icy expression. At the next moment, the Neomare saw Raindrops and Shirley holding up their elements, and she grabbed her own. Get ready, said Shirley. I've got this, muttered Trixie. She used the illusion and returned to the prior one, with the ponies leaving at night, returning early the next morning. Then she slowly slid forward to the Wendigo, as if giving it a peace offering. Come on, be reasonable. Work with me here. Finally, the Wendigo slammed down a hoof and sent another image. This one forceful enough it almost hurt Ditsy to look at. But it matched the Trixie's. The elements and Poussons were leaving, and they were returning when the sun was high. Yes, in the Wendigo's illusion, they were returning with Ice Heart, but still, the leaving part was the same. Ditsy's heart let, "Come on," she thought. "Trixie, Poussons, let's just go." "It'll have to do," said Poussons. "Dame Trixie, I believe the Wendigo will allow us to disengage. Sorry." "Of course, fine," said Trixie. "I suggest you go first. We'll stand between you and the Wendigo, just in case it pursues us." Poussons inclined her head, taking a moment to shake her wings as if waking them up, launched herself into the air. A moment later, Ditsy saw her flying back towards the hotel, towards warmth and light, and the crystal ball that the mailman was going to use to call her little muffin. A few moments after that, Trixie began to lead the elements home. As he crested the hill and began to descend, Ditsy looked back. The last he saw of the Wendigo was its frozen gaze staring directly at her. "Ditsy, wake up!" Ditsy groaned and rolled over. "Dinky, your mama's nappy. Go play with Sparkler." The girl she heard wasn't Dinky's. Opening her eyes, she saw Lyra smiling down at her. "Everybody's down in Hugh's lounge room. Wanna come?" "Lounge?" Ditsy blinked. She remembered stumbling back to the hotel, still cold and weary, forcing herself to take a hot shower so she didn't risk catching cold. Then she let her lie down for a moment before contacting and, "Wait, what time is it?" "The sun went down maybe half an hour ago. The fire staff says dinner will be in." Ditsy rolled to her host. "An hour ago? Oh no, I didn't talk to Dinky." She glared at Lyra. "You self-woken me." "Hey, we tried," said Lyra, "but you were out cold, so Trixie contacted her to check in. Dinky's doing fine. In fact, she had an adventure with Skulu today." "Adventure?" asked Ditsy. "What kind of adventure?" "Well..." Twilight Sparkle grunted as her horn flared a bright purple. When it was over, she took a moment before saying, "Alright, there you go. You can walk on clouds now, Dinky," said the foal, bouncing up and down. She turned to Sparkle and Pokey, who had escorted Dinky herself, and Twilight respectfully to the outskirts of town. "This is going to be fun." Pokey nodded. "Now all you need is Skidaloo. Where is that fool?" "I'm over here." The ponies all turned to see Skidaloo scrolling up, two little claws securely fastened to the back of her wagon. Rainbow Dash flew loops over her head. Heavy Roller trotted by her side, and a large mobile foal was hurrying to catch the three of them. "You sure you can handle them?" Rainbow Dash called down. "2 clouds is a bit much for any pony." "Sure, I'm sure," said Skidaloo. "No problem." Dinky waited at the approaching group as she helped Skidaloo untie the clouds when the Pegasus arrived. She asked Sparkler. Sparkler screwed her face to pretend concentration. Dinky made a pleading face. "Well, alright. Just this once." Dinky beamed. Heavy Roller held Skidaloo fastened the helmet securely to her head. "Is this really done in Pegasus series?" he asked Rainbow Dash. "Sure. We used to race clouds all the time up at Cloudsteel," said the weather captain. "Before I learned to fly on my own, I was racing clouds day and night. Best way to travel. Except for wings, of course." "I don't doubt it," said Sparkler. She turned to Twilight. "Thanks for doing this. Ever since Cheerilee talked about cloud races in class, thinking wanted to do one. And when you mentioned that cloud walking spell..." "Don't mention it. Happy to help," said Twilight. "It really is a fascinating spell. In fact, the same principles behind it could probably be used to let ponies manipulate other intangible substances. Smoke, for instance. Imagine a fire pony could just ball up all the smoke into a fire and throw it in the trash, and maybe..." As she chatted, the 2 foals climbed into their clouds. Dinky giggled at the feeling. It was like she was lying on a big comfy pillow that floated a few inches above the ground. "Ready!" called Skidaloo. Heavy Roller and Sparkler began abuse mucks. Puggy grinned, standing between them. "To the racing, begin!" he roared. Immediately, Dinky reached down and pushed off the ground with a hoof. The cloud moved forwards and began to float down the path, quickly picking up speed as Dinky kicked down. She grinned, then looked to one side, and got a face full of cloud as Skidaloo guided her cloud into Dinky's, knocked her back. "Ha!" said the Pegasus, buzzing her wings against speed. "I'm not gonna win!" Dinky grinned. She kicked down even higher, surging her cloud ahead. Behind him, the adult foals laughed as the 2 continued to bounce down the road. Ditsy blinked. Cloud race? She heard such things, so she never participated herself, largely for the same reason she didn't go flying in Cloud City limits. Who won? Lyra grinned as she continued. After innumerable bumps and bounces, the end was sight, and Dinky noticed he was having a slight lead. Scootaloo had started out fast, but fallen behind, whereas Dinky followed Twilight's advice to brace herself. It seemed to be paying off. She grinned. It was like Trixie always said, being the best was awesome. All she had to do was keep driving herself forwards, aiming right at the finish line Pinky had set up. Her thoughts were interrupted as another foal blithely crawled across her path. Squealed Dinky as she crashed into the air foal. She felt herself falling forwards, bunking her head and her hose into the interloper. Before they tumbled to the ground with clouds sitting around them, her barrel hit the dirt with a loud thump. She got to her hooves and her head horn poking through the cloud in time to see Scootaloo finish the finish line. She complained, "I'm so close! Close to what?" A brown maned pony with a white and brown coat poked his head through the cloud. "What's going on?" Dinky looked at Pipsqueak, who was standing there, in her cloud, mere inches from her. She said as she felt her cheeks flush. "Nothing important." She paused. "So, what are you doing here?" Okay, I was about to wash off this whole entire scene that probably could have been easily just written as a descriptor. But then you hit me with a toy ship, so I forgive you, scene. Dizzy couldn't help but laugh at that. "I'm glad she's having fun. She wasn't too sad I didn't talk to her, was she?" "We told you were exhausted from helping to protect the Vice Dream from a big monster. She said that was fair, as long as she gets an extra hug when you get home." "Good." Dizzy slowly nodded. "Thanks, and sorry I yelled at you," she frowned. "I don't know what came over me." "A lot of us are a little on edge. Trixie thinks it's got something to do with the Wendigo. It's possible it can make ponies grumpy." Lyra shrugged. "But you know what's the best cure for grumpiness is? Company. Come on, I'll show you downstairs. Trixie's with Poussons, but the rest of us are all hanging out." Ditsy yawned, but she made herself get up. "That sounds lovely. Thank you, Lyra." As it turned out, Ditsy saw Lyra does the elements that she had said every pony was downstairs. As he entered the lounge, which, despite the murals of fast star skates, made Ditsy feel very small, was still comfortable and friendly thanks to the plush carpet, warm fire, and luxurious furniture. She saw the default ponies were there too. No pony seemed to be looking at her, though, so after nodding to Lyra and watching her trot to a table where Bounty was mixing something, she meandered to the fire and lay down on her barrel in front of it. She sighed to herself as the fire warmed her. Yellow mane flopped over her face, and she spent several moments like that, just basking in the heat, and letting the fuzzy carpeting take hold of her. "This is much better." Gradually, she became aware of other conversations. Opening her eyes, she saw Lyra was hanging around Bounty, watching him work and peppering her questions. "That looks delicious," she said. "Next you add the butter, right?" "No. Next I will add some butterscotch. It's better texture and will..." "Lots of cookies to rise more," said Lyra. "Bonbon taught me that once." Bounty nodded. "Yes." Unlike before, Ditsy nodded. He didn't seem to mind, he interrupted. Possibly because Lyra understood what he was doing. "After that, I will add the chocolate." Lyra grinned. "What will you use for chocolate chips?" "The Vice Dream brought a supply of high-quality dark chocolate from the province of Brazil." Turning to her other side, Ditsy saw Tim's in a corner working on a typewriter. Raindrops was sitting near him, reading through what looked like an advanced reader copy of a book. Suddenly, Raindrops gasped. "What? Wait, I thought if Kelpie fell in love with a landmare, he'd be banished from his native seaweed forest forever." Tim nodded sagely. "Yep, I wrote that in the last book." "But Kale can't be best. He needs to be able to go home so he can drive out the usurpers who are corrupting the kingdom." "Kale the Kelpie," thought Ditsy. Meanwhile, Tim shrugged, right again. "Well, he won't be best, right? It'll all work out." "I don't know. I guess you'll have to read on," said Tim. Smiles sprang his face. In fact, you might even need to wait for the sequel to find the answer to that one. "Gah!" said Raindrops, but it was pleasant in her voice. She sighed theatrically and dove back into the book. Ditsy rolled over and sat up. At the back of the room was a cast-iron tub, in which Stream Dreams was splashing around. Bones was there, too, as was Cheerilee. "I'm just saying," the teacher continued, The Viceroy seems to have a lot of power over you. Stream shrugged.
So, Princess Luna has power over her and both of us. Besides, the Viceroy owns the vault. It's hers by right. What would you change?
Have her constrained by formal laws, ratified through the Night Court, which clarify what she can and can't do in the vault. This is the law protects us from our highest ministers if they choose to do something corrupt.
Does it?
Asked Dream.
I mean, if Princess Luna decided for whatever that she wanted to banish a random pony, would she really be incapable of it thanks to the law? Doesn't she have the resources to see it happen without consequence to herself?
Cheerily flushed.
She would never. I know. She would never choose to do such a thing. But in that case, the law preventing her from doing such is superfluous, isn't it?
And if she did want to,
the law would be no help stopping her. And such was the point of the law.
Stream Dreams leaned against the wall of the tub.
In my opinion, sovereign rulers should be constrained by paper laws. If the ruler is bad, no law will protect the populace from them. If the ruler is good, then the law will only tie the ruler's hooves and prevent them from doing good things.
It also gives them a list of checks and balances that would also protect them. You thought about a lot of this one, said Cheerily.
I was a princess once. I ruled countless sea ponies before I was supposed. I did give some thought to my governing philosophy.
Cheerily slowly nodded. Dizzy saw a frown forming on her face and wondered if she was looking forward to a spirit debate.
See, however, I had to disagree with you.
Yes, folks, I know. You come to this show for not just the Lunaverse, but deep heated political debates between two ponies.
Oh.
First, I reject your premise that the law would hold no hindrance if Luna wanted to do something illegal. Or seek to try, the law she's set up would block her at every turn. Laws protecting the freedom of the press would allow reporters to sniff what she had done. And as she tried to disregard those laws too, she had to find ways to set up hundreds of nosy reporters, and ponies would begin to notice. Laws permitting freedom of the assembly would allow the missing pony's family and friends to gather and demand an investigation into their missing loved ones night and day. The resulting investigations could well expose Luna. There are literally hundreds of laws that could interfere. Bones nodded. Yup.
Bones,
admonished Stream Dreams in mock annoyance.
How could you?
Cheerily chuckled as Bones shrugged.
It's a good point.
Really, said Stream Dreams, smiling as well.
And even if it's true, the constraint of the law often inhibited the prompt action of...
Ditsy turned him out and turned to the fireplace. To one side, she heard a door open. Glancing in that direction, she saw Orange Ring come in with Carrot Top and a basket of oranges. Both were chatting rapidly about farm-related topics. Though Carrot Top kept shooting cautious glances at the oranges, was clever and seemed ready to explode. Ditsy smiled to herself as Carrot Top said,
It must be nice to have a bumper crop every year. What do you do with the excess oranges? Excess?
Orangey tilted her head.
There's no excess. Anyway, Dudley, I use for science. I dissected to see how orangey they are, and how I can make them even more orangey. Why, what do you do with your excess carrots? Eat them.
Carrot Top was smiling.
I never dissected a carrot. It sounds hard. Nah, you can just cut them into little pieces and figure out how each of them could be more carroty. Like, is the stem really pulling its weight? Whether they're orange and yummy. I never thought about that,
Carrot Top conceded.
Although, there's a Ponyville confectioner whose mother tends to work on similar projects. Maybe I should run these ideas by her. Yeah, with a little scientific help, you could probably be the most super cards in all Equestria.
Ditsy chuckled, was about to get up and join that conversation, when she heard someone calling her name. Dame Ditsy, said Silver Sculptress, who just walked into the room. She sat in front of the fire. Hello.
Hello, said Ditsy, sitting slightly so the sculptor had room. Did you have a good day?
Yeah, I got a lot of work done on my sculpture,
Silver smiled.
It depicts Commander Hurricane and his famous victory over General Bloodlust of the Griffin Empire. Viceroy says he'll have it installed in one of the public parks in Southern California.
That's very nice, said Ditsy. Must be fun to have so many ponies looking at your work.
Silver nodded. Indeed.
The two were silent for a moment, Ditsy letting the chatter from the others wash over her. Eventually, Silver asked her,
You still good?
Ditsy shook her head.
I'm mostly warmed up by now.
She glanced out a small window on one side of the room. The lights from the hotel illuminated the snow-swept plain stretching way into the darkness.
It did take a while, though. It's cold outside.
You need a warmer jacket, advised Silver. I saw you coming back in, shivering. But there's a cozier in the vault who makes enchanted garments. They barely weigh anything at all, and they cannot be warm. I could ask Faisreen if it would be alright for her to make a new coat for you.
For a moment, Dizzy thought of herself prancing through Ponyville, feeling light as a feather and warm as a hearthstone as she played with Dinky. But after a moment, her thoughts caught up with her, and she shook her head.
Thank you, she said, but I like my current jacket. It's just my size. It's warm enough for me. It was made by a good friend.
She smiled as she thought of Rarity bustling about her, rubbing her so many measuring tapes she almost tied Dizzy as a knot as she worked to find a jacket just the right size.
Plus, my little nothing helped me pick it out.
Silver took her head. But if you could have a better one.
But it wouldn't be mine, Dizzy sighed. I know how mine feels and how it moves. It's also got some good memories, even though it's only about a month old. For instance, when I ran slightly a couple of weeks ago, my daughter helped me mend it. I was playing hide and seek with her last week, she hid in the jacket. She couldn't help giggling into memory. I appreciate the offer, but I prefer my own. Thank you, though.
After a moment, Silver nodded her head.
Very well. But if you change your mind, offer's still open.
What offer?
All the ponies in the room turned to see Pusson's walking into the room, Trixie nodding along with her. The Faisreen looked around for a moment before seeing herself in a large chair as it were a throne.
Please,
she said, a smile crossing on her lips. Don't deduct by yourselves on my account.
I offered to ask Threadbare Neil to make her a coat for Ditsy,
said Silver Sculptress. Dizzy couldn't help but note the most reverent tone of Sculptress' work.
But she says he prefers her own.
Own? Dizzy frowned. She saw a sparkle in Pusson's eye, and had a sinking feeling that Faisreen wanted to get revenge on her from her comments earlier about unconditional love.
Yes,
the mailman said, slightly more sharply than she intended.
The jacket that I own. I like it, and I don't want another.
Good, said Faisreen. She moved the wing almost perfectly. A moment later, her camel servant hurried to the next room with a large pot of tea and immaculate biscuits.
I think most ponies should own at least one jacket for weather such as this.
Except for very special ponies, such as my little Ice Heart. We find it dreadful to be caught outside in this weather without a coat. Bounty said in a prim voice.
Vaseline, did you order a big jacket giveaway during the equestrian games a few years back?
Yes, I did. Pussa smiled at that. Dizzy wondered if she'd been fishing for that comment.
Yes. The Winter Equestrian Games were being held in California that year. I left early for my inspection tour to make sure everything was up to standards to demand the occasion. When I learned, to my dismay, that some of the ponies in that area didn't have their own jackets. A few couldn't afford it. Others lost or torn theirs. There was those who didn't have coats, but not ones warm enough to keep comfortable. I could hardly have an equestrian games in my populous state home for fear of the cold, so I commenced the Lord's order from Philly Fabric. She sipped her tea and made sure that, when the games began, every pony in the area could attend a warm and comfortable jacket. Her gaze drifted in the air slightly. It was one of the largest turnouts of equestrian games in recent history, as I recall.
Philly Fabric?
Asked Shirley. They're a high-end designer firm, aren't they? I'm surprised the game's budget covered that. Pusson's waved us off with a flick of her wing. They made every competitive offer when they saw the large quantity that could be ordered. Also, with every pony bundled up, it wasn't necessary to have the stands heated, or to cast spells to keep the heat from leaching into the field, which are more expensive than you might think. The extra money allowed me to add to the landscaping and catering budgets. In fact, Bird's a Twist, I'm sure you heard of her, the famous ice sculptor, debuted her first exhibits on the lawns of the ice surgery fields. She sighed softly. It was a wonderful games, and when it was over, seeing all the ponies go home, with even the poorest of them owning a nice warm jacket to protect them from the coldest days winter. Faisreen trailed off, her voice hesitating near the end as your own sir was saying. String dreams led to the gap.
Is something wrong, Faisreen?
Nothing really. It's just, in the past few years I was thinking. For those ponies, they only got one jacket and couldn't get another. Did they really own it at all?
Her gaze flitted towards Ditzy, and the grey-coated mare narrowed her eyes slightly. Perhaps this is just the ponderings of an old mare, and it is. But it seems to me that if you only have one of something that you need and can't get the other, then while you might possess it, you don't already own it. She tried. But prattled on. Please don't let me distract you.
What do you mean?
Asked Ditzy before she could stop herself. This is what we call double talk, Ditzy. Also, Plaisance is being a bit of an idiot. And a tool. Plaisance smile returned, thus therefore. Well, it seems to me that ownership is defined by having the power to do whatever you please to the object you own. If a pony checks out a library book, for example, they can go home and put it on the bookshelves, but they're actually quite limited in what they're allowed to do with it. You may not write in it, damage it, or throw it away. However, if that same pony purchased a book from the store and owned it, they could do whatever they wanted with it. Scribble all over it, tear up pages, throw it away, or even burn it. Indeed, I would contend that if you have something which you cannot freely dismantle or discard, you do not own it. So I was thinking, suppose the pony does have a jacket, a wonderfully insult one they love, but they only have one and cannot attain another. Do they really own it? They cannot throw it away or destroy it, because they have no jacket that would have to go outside in freezing weather with nothing on. They cannot even give it to a friend, or even load it out in case they need it later. And even when they wear it, they must restrict their own motions to avoid damaging it, move slowly and cautiously, give a wide berth to sharp corners. In fact, they must make so much care to keep it safe and protected, so it's more like the jacket owns them, and not the other way around. Ditzy rose. She felt a wave of cold anger washing over her, and though she told herself it was probably residual effects for being so close to a literal Wendigo, she couldn't pass past it.
I only have one jacket, she said, and I do own it.
Plaisance put a wing to her mouth. Oh, please forgive me, dame, if I have offended. I was only speaking hypothetically. In fact, she brightened. Are you sure you wouldn't like threaded needle to stitch you another? Even if you do prefer your own. Certainly a relief to know that in the back of your mind. That, if the worst had happened, if your jacket were damaged or lost, you would have another. You would not need to risk facing the cold unaided. It was tempting for a moment, but not for longer than that. Even if there were no strings attached, and Ditzy doubted Plaisance would be so generous as to give her a jacket, without expecting something in return, she didn't want force on her. And, still an angry part of her whispered, she didn't need it. She worked hard, and while she didn't have a lot, she had enough to raise Dinky in a comfortable, loving environment. She didn't need the charity of a rich benefactor who cared more about scoring points than doing good.
No, thank you, she said. My own jacket's fine for my needs, and...
She hesitated a moment before continuing on.
I think you're wrong anyways. Just being able to destroy something doesn't mean you own it.
Plaisance raised an eyebrow. Really? Behind her, Trixie was frantically waving her hose at Ditzy to get her to stop talking. But Feisty didn't notice. Please explain, dame. Ditzy almost backed down, but found she couldn't. The Feisty, she thought, stood in front of the whole room and called her too poor to own anything. She wasn't going to take that lying down.
When I bought that jacket, I didn't feel like I owned it right away. It was mine legally, and I wore it, but still felt like it was the store's or some other pony's. But after I wore it for a couple of weeks, and learned everything about it, every crease and fold and rough spot, then it felt like mine. You have to understand something to own it. That's why a library book isn't owned by a pony. It isn't because they can burn it, like when they want to, but because they only have it for a short time. They don't have the time to learn how heavy it feels when they're reading in bed, or comfortably rest in the crook of their leg, or how the sun glints out the cover on a crisp fall day. It's a foreign object they can't let their guard down around, because they don't really know it. But they hadn't owned it for a month or a year. It wouldn't matter if they couldn't scribble on or spill soup on it. They still feel like they own it. And
Ditzy realized the words were coming out of her in a rush, but she couldn't let herself keep carried on.
If you know something well enough to own it, if you know every little unique detail that makes it different from every other book or jacket or table that exists, then you know it too well to want to destroy it. You said take care of my jacket isn't because I can't replace it. It's because I like it. Every inch of it. And I don't want to damage it. But if you look at something you own, still thinking about destroying it for no reason, that means you don't know it well enough to know why it's irreplaceable. doesn't deserve to be thrown out. And how can you own something, really own it, if you don't even understand what it is that makes it so special?
For a long moment, no pony spoke. And Dizzy slowly became aware that every pony was staring at her. Poussin's glare seemed frosty. The mailman below realized he had just implied Freisting, Poussin's non-political collector extraordinaire knew nothing about collections that were pride and joy.
I mean... Then Trixie said, "Oh, Viceroy! I wanted to ask you a favor earlier. Could I have a word?"
Of course, said Poussin's in a decidedly tense voice. At your pleasure, Dame Trixie.
Ditsy hesitated, mouth hanging open, a still sunlight pressing against her side.
Hi,
Said Orange Ring.
Can Rita